somehow in the latter part of his career, he was a detective. Steppenwolf got a hold of him. In particular, it was Mr. Kinney got a hold of him. And he started acting in movies like Snatch and things like that.
And Octagon with Chuck Norris. And
I'm not familiar with Octagon, but I know he was in Snatch. He was also in...
Well, not Octagon, but he was in a movie with Chuck Norris as a cop.
I think you're thinking of like Code of Silence or something like that.
Code of Silence.
Yeah,
we're talking about the same guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
White Italian guy.
Curly hair. Yeah.
Mustache. He's deceased now.
Yes.
Okay.
Recently died, I think last year.
Yes.
So he was in that show. And so it was something where Greg is someone who I actually wanted a very long relationship with because I learned so much from him. As an actor, as a man, as an activist, as someone who's being aware of his politics, his integrity, died way too young. And then the second one was actually Philip Jackson, who was the artistic director of the Kennedy King Theater back in the mid-'80s, who actually went on a trip to Italy and his appendix broke. And he died then.
Yeah, Victor had sent. Thank you, Victor, for sending me the picture of Dennis. Yeah, we sitting up here. He's listening to the show. He's like, "You guys are messing up his name." Okay. Yeah. All right. So it's called. His name is Dennis France. Franz.
No, that's the bald-headed guy.
Yeah.
No. Farina,
Victor.
Look up Farina. Yeah. This guy. Yeah, I got my phone here.
But you had your experience with working with some wonderful actors and coming in contact with some great contacts like Victor Gully and A Taste of Theater and other individuals in this industry, because it's very hard to come across actors and actresses that have a love for their craft.
Yeah.
And you know, this industry is very, very tough. And I'm learning a lot. I'm not in the industry. I'm in the radio business. But, hey, maybe when I get out in the radio business, maybe I'll take a crack at some rubbing my elbows with some of the high-end. Hopefully you guys are still in the industry. You know.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people need to really understand what this is all about, how it runs, how it operates, how to keep a boat afloat on the boat without getting caught up in a jam of being financially, because, hey, you know, I'm paying the mortgage here and paying the mortgage of the house. I take it that's the same way with the playwrights. You know, you taking your finances to put out there for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a production. And you still have to pay people.
Yeah. No, it's a very serious business, and it's something where it's that's why I encourage people to, you know, you have things that are commercially viable, right? And I was telling you earlier that I had...
What's that word again?
Commercially viable.
Commercially viable. That's the word for today. Commercially viable. I'm not going to try to sit up here and spell it, but that's the word for today, y'all. Commercially viable. And you know what? We're going to take that word. I'm going to write that word down. We're going to take that word and we're going to use that for next week. Next week, that is commercially viable. Victor, if you can remind me, write that down for me, because I know you're listening. That's going to be the word of today, commercial viably. Okay? So we're going to find out how can you be commercially viable in your industry for next week in Playwright Tuesday. So as you were saying, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
I like to pick out key words from playwrights.
Yeah.
You know, because you know everybody says craft and benefits and here and here. I can talk to you about playwright, but key words will stick out in somebody's mind on this industry, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, and it's something though that everyone has to make a choice on their career as a whole and project by project that they get involved with, what and why they're doing. That's one of the things that Gregory Williams taught me, was having a political content to what you're doing, and a sociological content to what you're doing, which is, when I was researching this play about Jeff Fort and Fred Hampton, it was something where, Fred Hampton is a very, how can I put it? It's kind of a hot seat. Before, before we came on the air, you said there's a hot seat, and so doing a script featuring his life, sort of a hot seat, particularly living in Chicago. But it was something where there's so many, how can I put it? Treasure. There's so much treasure actually in both characters, in the Jeff Fort character and in the Fred Hampton character, that most people don't know about. That is something that I wanted to explore. And even though that, it may make white people or more conservative people, white or black, a little apprehensive and things like that, I'm a firm believer of that. The things that happened in the 60s, I call the 60s an era where conversation was stopped because of assassinations. And I feel that the conversations that were halted unexpectedly or somewhat expectantly because of assassinations will still have to be talked about. And it's like if a person is married and husband and wife have this argument, and it's just like the argument is like cut short, and so you can like walk around the house and have this cloud of anger around you like all day because that conversation never came to its natural conclusion. And so I think, to put it in a nutshell, I think that's what we've seen for the past 30, 40 years, is that this cloud has been around this nation because the conversations of the 60s have not come to a natural conclusion. And so this script about Fred Hampton and Jeff Fort, and even the other script, Gangsters, in a way, is a continuation of that conversation.
Wow. Okay. Let me ask you a question. I don't see too much of this. You hear the word Chitlin Circuit. I know back in the Motown era, it was called the Chitlin Circuit when the artists would go around, and when the playwrights and the juke joints and everything would go to the Chitlin Circuit. Mm-hmm. Is there any way of bringing that Chitlin Circuit back and letting people see what it was really about? You hear the words, you hear about Bronzeville, you hear about all these legacy places and everything. Mm-hmm. The Pullman Pullers.
Mm-hmm.
Over in West Pullman, Roseland. You hear about that, but you don't really see about that. How about a play portraying the Pullman Pullers? The first African-American Pullman. And a lot of people are like, what are Pullmans? So those are men that was dressed up with the hats and the gloves, and they walked around the trains and
serve people.
And serve people. Right. I think half of these young men would probably freak out if they had to do that right now. We actually riding on the Pullman trains. They call Metro trains.
Right. Yeah.
But the only thing is they don't have dining cars. And the Amtrak cars do. Mm-hmm. If they don't, if they just stay on the tracks.
Right. Yeah. That's a problem. Yeah. No. It's as far as the Chitlin Circuit, I think that at the event where I met Victor at, there was one particular playwright there. Her name, she was the author of Stickfly. Her name is Lydia Diamond. She went to school in Chicago over at Northwestern, and then had a short period of stay here before the Stickfly actually went to Broadway. So in question about, how do you get people interested in your show and things like that, she was just like, well, during the time when I was knocking on doors, it came to me that it's just like, no one's going to open these doors for me for whatever reason. Even though her play has already been on Broadway, it's been successful. Having another show over at Kenny Leon's Theater, I think this coming season, and it has this kind of history that she actually had to create her own theater company.
Wow.
And many playwrights have a similar story, where you're not getting attention from Victory Gardens, you're not getting attention from Steppenwolf, you're not getting attention from Goodman Theater. And there is a lot...
is the Goodman Theater, the Steppenwolf, are those white theaters, or they are.
Yeah. Right. They're large. They're called off-loop theater or regional theater companies.
And is it racism in those theaters? Is that the reason why? Is that why a lot of black playwrights are forced to go to having their plays, or their stage director having their plays in churches or gymnasiums or grade school auditoriums or something like that?
There's a huge discussion about that, and there's a lot of layers to it. But the long and short of it is that there is not the openness that they proclaim that they have. And it's something where there's a huge debate nationally regarding is it right to have black playwrights doing plays in white theaters where the intricacies and the delicacies and the minutia of detail that you can find in black life may have to be censored or cut out of a theater like the Goodman, like Steppenwolf.
Why?
Because the staffs who work there don't know what the hell that you're talking about.
Say that again.
The staffs that work there will not understand cultural innuendos.
Okay.
The same way that you and I would. So something that you and I would hear, they would, oh yeah, of course. When a white staff members there hear the same thing, it's a matter of now that you have to translate that experience. And with translating it, oftentimes the complaint is that it's a matter of validation, that the innuendos now have to be validated, and they don't need to be validated by you.
You bring up that word validate, very blatantly, clearly.
Okay.
I was at my former church Sunday.
Okay.
Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was there speaking.
Okay.
Now, my former pastor got up there and spoke, I got a doctorate degree, I got a master's degree, I got this degree. Mm-hmm. Now, I've had some issues with the church, with the way the women dress. Mm-hmm. But Minister Louis Farrakhan got up there and blasted the women. He said, that's wrong. And then he turned around to the pastor and said, yeah, you might be the pastor. Mm-hmm. But I don't need a degree to define who I am. God knows who I am.
Okay.
And that's the same with playwrights. With you saying how you're coming together with your stage playwright, and they're not validating who you are as an African American. Mm-hmm. And how the staff would not be able to take it, but only on a doctoral level. And it kind of shut up a lot of people in the church that I went to. Like, oh, wow. Just before Farrakhan was got up there, yeah, I don't need a degree. Hey, I don't need a master's degree, a doctorate. For what? I'm in this for the love of God. And that's what you directors are in this for the love of your craft. And a lot of people don't understand what y'all go through, and that's why I brought up the Chitlin Circuit, because the Chitlin Circuit is the Sojourner Truth, the Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, the North Star of what y'all are doing, the foundation of stage right, because stage play came from African Americans. Am I correct? That's what Africans did as slaves. While after they got through working a hard day, they had to put on an act and everything to keep the smiles up with their family, no matter when their wife being pulled out the barn or whatever. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that's how can I put this? When you're talking about first, and I'm going to say this in like nutshell speak, okay? So I'm just going to try to put it in the shortest amount of words possible so we have time. when you talk about first, you have to look at, honestly and realistically, without, hatred in your heart and just love for the truth, who and what